Yeah. And we'll get into that. So do you want to give us a little bit of background of like where you're from, how you started, and kind of like how you got here in your career?
Sure. Okay. Well, we will start with my background. So I'm half French and half English. My dad, he is English. My mum is French. I was born in England and I grew up there. And then I grew up, I didn't particularly grow up with a romantic background of baking cakes or,
Mm-hmm.
memories of making whatever with my grandma, that kind of thing. I just always liked food. Always, I've always been a greedy person. Like I love to eat and I love
Same.
sweet. Like that's just that, like my family will say, like, she loves to eat. So that's kind of always been the thing. And when I finished my studies at university, I actually did business management with marketing. I did quite a kind of global thing. I was always from an early age interested in being an entrepreneur. Actually, that
Mm.
really, probably from age 14 or so, when I started business at school, that always really appealed to me. I just didn't really know in what I was going to be an entrepreneur. So I did these studies at university at age 22. After finishing my studies, I moved to Paris. And I really, at that point, kind of wanted to get in touch with my French side of myself, the culture, learn the language. I didn't unfortunately grow up speaking French in my household, so there was a lot of things that I kind of wanted to, let's say, play catch up, in a sense, and kind of learn about this whole other side of myself. And during that time, those kind of first years in Paris, I mean, I had a marketing background, so I worked as a community manager for about 4 years. And I had what I can only describe as a mid-20s crisis, which is a thing. It
Oh,
is
100%. Oh, 100%.
100%. So when I was 25, I quite literally was sitting every day in my desk job, just wondering what I was doing with my life.
Oh,
And
100%. Me
yeah,
too. Me too,
yeah,
100%. Like 2 years ago, I was literally waking up every day crying. I was like,
yeah,
wait, is this life?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
if it is, it's not, that's not a good.
Completely. I mean, a perfectly fine job. I loved my colleagues,
100%.
but just something was missing. And so during this kind of crisis, I somehow basically decided to take a sabbatical from my work and retrain as a pastry chef. And just to backtrack a tiny bit, once I kind of moved to Paris, I mean, saying before that I loved eating, the food of Paris, I mean, it was just so amazing. And
It is.
even though my mum is French, I would spend like vacation, every summer with my French family. It wasn't in Paris, it was kind of in a small village, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have much, let's say, exposure to the world of French pastry, to all the beautiful, the boutiques and the palace and the restaurants and all these
Yeah.
different things. So I kind of had started at this time, like experimenting, trying to make choux pastry and macarons, and I just loved it. I loved the discipline of it. I was super interested in it. So I basically decided to go to culinary school, and I went to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris.
And how old were you when you went to culinary school?
I was 25 when I started.
Okay.
So the kind of process of learning, it was quite a long process. The course that I did was basically about 9 months in total. And I wasn't able to do the whole course in one go. It was just too expensive. So I did one part of the course to kind of see, is this just a passion? Am I actually even good at it? Would I want
Mm.
to get into a career? I didn't know. I mean, a lot of people even will go to the school just almost for the fun of it. It can be a passion and a hobby, but it doesn't necessarily turn into a career. And for me, it was really like a click. It just, things fell into place, and I just knew that's where I kind of wanted to be. And so I actually eventually, through, let's say, some incredible good luck, got fired from my job, because they had to make quite a few people redundant. They'd kind of grown too quickly. They were having financial problems.
Yeah.
And they knew at this point that I really wanted to be a pastry chef. So they fired me. Because of the circumstances in which I was fired, I actually was given government support for some time
Oh,
to
so you
find
were laid
another job.
off. Yeah.
Laid off, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess we say kind of, yeah, laid off, you'd say. So I actually had kind of the rest of my school paid for me, which was fantastic, because then I could continue the program. And once I'd graduated, I mean, you have no practical experience, so to speak. And I had all these kind of plans. I was 26, I think, by this point, all these kind of plans with what I wanted to do, perhaps open my own business, maybe a tea room, maybe a pastry shop. I didn't really know, but I knew that I needed that practical experience. So the kind of first steps was going out into the world. I started with an internship in a pastry boutique, then, worked in another, and then it eventually kind of being someone who didn't come to pastry at a young age. And by that, I mean, in France, people start at 14. That is the normal age wanting to go into pastry. So for me, I was already like a veteran in the game. I'm already coming in late into the game, but in a sense, changing my career. I had this background in business management. I had this background in other things. I've worked in a team before. I'd managed teams before. I had all these other skills that I could apply to being a pastry chef. And for me, it became kind of quite apparent quite early on to me that I really loved this side of teaching. And so after kind of getting these experiences in different pastry shops, I returned to the Cordon Bleu, which is where I had been a student, and I started working as part of their team. And after some time working there, they actually basically offered to me, would I like to become a full-time teaching instructor, which was really great. It's kind of really what I wanted to do, get that experience. So I did that. I became a teaching instructor. I had the opportunity to, work with students all over the world, to give workshops, to give longer classes, shorter classes, all these different things. And at this point, I was kind of getting to the point in my new career, shall we say, of where I'd wanted to work freelance for myself for a long time. But I knew that I had to put in the time first working for other people. I knew I had to do that. I knew I had to get the experience. I knew I had to work in different places. And each place that I had chosen to work at was really kind of a step for me to get to my end goal of effectively working for me on my own time. And so when I finally decided to leave the school, I forgot. I can say that again. So when I finally decided to leave the school, it was really my first steps into going to work for myself. And I think had I left earlier and tried to go out on my own earlier, I wouldn't have had these experiences. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to teach. I wouldn't have had really just the experience and the confidence in myself to be able to be where I am today, doing different things.
100%.
So kind of part of that afterwards and becoming freelance, I actually basically became freelance in the summer of 2019. So, a few months down the line, we had COVID. Nobody was expecting that to come. So it's been quite almost a kind of turbulent time. But when I first became freelance, I was working as a pastry chef for the Chateau du Gudanes, where we met in the south of France. And I was also working in Paris. I was working for caterers. I was making cake orders. I was kind of taking jobs as they came and finding my feet in the world of freelance. And then once kind of the pandemic came, I'd actually realized that perhaps living in Paris wasn't the best environment for me, and then I maybe wanted to work elsewhere in France. And so I left Paris after 10 years of being there, of kind of like learning all that I'd wanted to learn and going out and moving on my own. And then during the pandemic, I actually bought my own place in the south of France, so in the city where I live now, which is called Perpignan. And really, it sounds so silly, but that actual step really changed my life, because as a pastry chef, I mean, most people living in Paris, you have very small apartments, you don't have proper kitchens, you're not able, I was never able when I lived in Paris, really even to bake a cake at home was too difficult, let alone try and do cakes, make photos, do things for social media. So really kind of moving south gave me a lot of freedom to have a bigger kitchen, a kitchen I could work in, a place where I could actually work from home. And from there, really, I kind of really started to develop my business as a self-employed pastry chef. I mean, you might think, what is a freelance pastry chef? I mean, that can be a lot of different things. For me personally, it's a mixture of things. I am a teacher, and so I will teach classes in French pastry, either online or in person. Either people come to me, to my house, or I go to their house. And also I will do things like consulting. So people will come to me and say, for example, I'm working on a cookbook, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. I want to develop a recipe, and I can help write and develop a recipe for them, show them, the techniques behind that, and put together things for them. And then again, as we met at the Chateau du Gudanes, I also will work on events. So I will, for example, I normally spend about 3 months every summer living at this chateau in the south of France and working for their workshops, their seasons for weddings, for photo shoots, and catering and things like that. So it's kind of, I would say and what I really wanted to build for myself was a job in which I could do different things, because the classic journey of a pastry chef is you either work in a restaurant or you work in a pastry shop, and you work 5-6 days a week, 18 hours a day. It's a very, very hard job. So I really
100%.
I wanted to create something for myself that was sustainable and that really kept the passion in me about the job that I'm doing. And for me, that's really a mixture of doing different things and having the ability also to work at home. Not all the time, but when I want to.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I remember that stood out to me one day when we were in the kitchen together, I think we were like making pastry shoes or something like that. And you were asking me about what I do. And so I was telling you, and you're like, do you know what was so funny and then you were telling me about that marketing job that you had your mental breakdown over in your 20s.
Yes.
You were like, my boss told me I'm not creative and I should not even pursue creative. And my jaw dropped to the floor when you said that, because you were literally the most creative person I know. Like, not only your skill set, but the way that you ideas just flow out of you, and how brilliant your execution is when you're like, yeah, we have a wedding in January at the chateau and I'm thinking about doing the swan lake theme. And I was like, what? You are the most creative person I know. So the fact that people exist who never saw your potential, one, I could relate to that because I also felt that in my 20s. But it's just amazing how people have these opinions that they have no reason to have these opinions, but
I agree.
But thankfully you stayed the course and you stayed true to yourself, because imagine if that boss of yours, you were like, okay, well, so and so told me I'm not creative, so I'm I won't even bother.
Yes, I mean, I will admit, for me, as you say, it's kind of strange off the basis of nothing to be pigeonholed in such a way.
Yeah.
But that's something, it took me a long time, I would say years in my 20s, to actually overcome that, from one person telling me several times that I wasn't a creative person, to having a voice in my head that would tell me, you're not creative, you don't know how to do this, you don't know how to do. And that, I mean, when I first started school, this was while I was still working for that job, for that boss. Even things like in class, when you would be making a cake and it came to the final decoration and the decoration was up to you to do the decoration, I would almost have anxiety about doing the decoration myself, because I'd have this little voice saying, you're not creative, you don't know.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome is real. Yes.
The imposter syndrome was real. That actually took me quite a long time. And I would say, really kind of learning that, no, that isn't true at all. And, it took me a long time. And I agree. I mean, part of what appeals to me so much in pastry is how creative it is. I mean, making something out of just ingredients, eggs and flour and butter, and then at the end having, these kind of beautiful pieces of artwork almost. That's one of the things that appealed to me the most. And maybe I actually always had a creative side of me locked away inside, so to speak.
100%. Yeah, and I feel that about a lot of us. I feel like myself, and even all of my clients that I work with, I see the potential in them, but they're like, yeah, but I have all of these stories that I've been told growing up, so now I have to work proactively to untrain myself and unlearn these narratives and these habits that aren't true, but somebody just put them on us without ever having permission from us to put that on us.
Yes, no, I agree. And I think the point of, I mean, this boss who told me that I wasn't creative, he was being French about it, to be fair. He wasn't trying to be mean or anything.
Being French about it.
He was being French about it. What he said to me is I was a very organized person. So what he was trying to say by that is, you know, you can't be everything. Yeah, and I am a very organized person. You know, lists and, you know, whatever. But I think it took me actually several years to realize that you don't have to be one thing. You can be a very
you can be multidimensional. And
of course, and it took me a long time to realize my own potential through that of, oh, I can be this and this, you know.
And how do you think you overcame that imposter syndrome?
I think, I mean, I would say even today there are times when I think, oh my God, like what am I doing? You know, someone contacts you kind of out of the blue and you're like, oh gosh, you know, it's still something I think that I'm kind of learning, but I think that would really just be with time, with experience, with confidence in myself, and also with my achievements and starting to look back and go, oh wow, you know what, I made that, I achieved that, I did that. And then kind of really getting more of that confidence of, well, I do know what I'm talking about. I have these experiences. And I think also a lot through teaching and through me teaching other people, that's also taught me a lot myself, a lot about my kind of a lot about my confidence in myself and my own skills. And I mean, I remember, for example, when I first started out in my first ever pastry internship, and the sous chef who worked there was actually younger than me, probably by about 5 years. I think he was at 19 or 20. And I remember that no matter what happened, if there was ever a problem or anything, you could always go to him, and he would always have not necessarily an answer, but he'd always have an idea, you know, rather than throw out that whole batch of cream that we did wrong. Try this, we could try this, or we could try this. You know, he always had these kind of solutions or all ideas. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to be one day at that point in my kind of pastry chef career where I have the knowledge and the confidence to problem solve like that, to know why things went wrong or what we could do. And I think that took me, you know, several years of experience to get to that point. But I feel like I'm in that point today, particularly through teaching. Is, you know, a lot of it is what can go wrong, or why things go wrong, or why things go right. And kind of with pastry, we're really talking about quite a scientific kind of discipline, you know, so like, why this ingredient reacts like this, or when it's mixed together with that, what it's doing. And that can really kind of help you with helping people as they're learning kind of techniques of what they do need to do to make something right, or what might have gone wrong. So, you know, it's something that, you know, it's all kind of been a journey for me, and I can really personally, for me, like pinpoint moments, you know, in my life, or even conversations in my life that really kind of marked me in a certain way, for the better or not for the better.
Absolutely.
Put me all on my path, so to speak.
Oh, absolutely. And something else that really stood out to me was I have a lot of conversations with different women, whether they're my clients or just business owners in general, where they feel this sense of like, well, it's not happening fast enough. Right. Because in today's age, like, especially if you run, like, you physically are like in-person service provider. However, me working with a lot of online businesses, there's just this notion that everything has to be instant gratification. And also like, if you don't do it by a certain age, then it's just like all like downhill from there. But from what you were saying is that like, this is something you didn't even discover till your mid-20s. And even from there, you were like, I know this is going to take time, but it's a lot better than what I had before. And same for me. Like, I'm about to turn 31, but I didn't start my business until I was 29. Right. So even for me, I felt also like a little, you know, senior citizen about that. to be quite honest, which sounds ridiculous when I say it, because how many people wait until like they're retired to start like their actual passion projects, right? So, and there are a lot of people who are actually younger than me who make a lot more money than me. Even I have, you know, imposter syndrome and self-doubt about that. But it's like we're trying to build something here that's going to stand the test of time and really is going to like outlive us, and that's actually going to be a real company. So like, so, and the other way I see it is like the little steps, like you were saying, like all like one day they all come together and you have something that's like so remarkable, but that takes time. So stay your path, stay your lane, and even if it doesn't make sense in the moment, like eventually it will, and it boils up to what you actually want. And like you even said, like pastry chef, the life you're living now as a pastry chef is not common, but you still forged your own path because you were like, I want to be a pastry chef. I'm older, but I also like don't want to work 14-hour days. So I'm going to find a way that fits me. So so staying aligned, staying intentional, and like blocking out the noise is something I feel like I have to mentor my clients through all the time, because they see other people doing it what looks like to be a lot faster and quicker, and then they themselves think they're doing something wrong.
I can really relate to that. And talking about, well, if we go to last year, effectively last year in January 2021, you know, I have all these objectives, all these goals, all these kind of things that I want to do coming out of the pandemic, which obviously affected all of us in different ways.
Yeah.
It had an impact for cuisine, for pastry, for me, for all of my friends. It had an enormous impact on the work that we were doing. And so coming into 2021, you know, full of hope and full of excitement for all the things to come, and all of the projects that I had, I mean, they ground to a stop, because at the end of 2021, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and basically my world crumbled in a minute, you know. And so I think what I really learned from last year was patience, because all of the things that I had wanted to do, really starting out in January 2021, I have done them now today. Like I've got there, I've got where I wanted to be. I'm working on those things. But I had many months of being physically unable to work on those things because I was, you know, busy going through active treatment and different things like this. But really learning that, as you say, it doesn't have to happen today, now, tomorrow, the next hour. It's going to happen. If I'm working towards it, it will happen. And I need to also kind of respect that organic process and adapt to what is realistic, what is my life, what state I'm in physically, mentally at this point in time. You know, you do have to really kind of welcome that and work with it.
Yeah, I mean, they say comparison is the thief of joy, right? Because like if you were just focusing on your accomplishments and your successes, you probably would be thrilled of how far you've come, especially what you've personally overcome. But then on social media, you look at somebody else and you're like, well, they're much farther ahead. So now all of your accomplishments have gone out the door, right? So I think it's like really hard.
I agree. That's one of the big things, I think, coming from everything I've gone through last year. I've really kind of learned, I would say, it's kind of twofold. I would kind of have described myself before as more of a perfectionist, but now I've kind of come to understand the line between when enough is enough, or it's as, you know, as good as I'm able to do, and that's good enough. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, because life is not perfect. And then on the other side of that, the comparison with other people, that's very easy to do, and it's very easy
100%. I mean, I do it, and I have to actively stop myself.
Yeah. I think that that's something, and of course, I mean, it's incredibly competitive in the pastry world. It can even be very toxic in the pastry world. You know, where did you work, or under what chef did you work, and you know, where are you working now, and a lot of judgment in that. And I think that's taken me a bit of time to kind of come to realize that comparison should be not so much comparison as in, you know, seeing other people for inspiration for yourself and for your own career, but not so much a comparison, because it's so easy to do. And it's easy to do with everything. It's easy to do with your career. It's easy to do with me going through breast cancer. Every single person's journey is incredibly different, but you still compare, this person is better off than me or worse off than me. But this person this person didn't have to have chemotherapy, they didn't have to lose your hair, you know, but this
Yeah.
person has breast cancer that's spread, it's secondary breast cancer, you know, there's so many different comparisons, and I just had to realize that, you know, I'm on my own path, my own journey, and that it doesn't there's no good that comes out of those comparisons.
Oh, 100%. So in the Limitless Mastermind that I run, we actually have a mindset coach in it to help the women, because especially running your own business is like a mind fuck within itself. You're basically in therapy with yourself every single day.
Yeah.
But so she comes in once a month and like coaches the women through their limiting beliefs and their imposter syndrome. And something that we've been working on is like staying grounded and staying in the present, but also like celebrating yourself when you have accomplishments, even if they're like really tiny ones, right? Because like you all of a sudden, like all of your accomplishments go out the door, like we said, when you see somebody else have something else that you don't have yet. So it's like grounding yourself in the moment, be like, oh, I just accomplished something, let's not like look over it, let's like be present in the now and celebrate that, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, no, I agree enormously with that. And yeah, it is a kind of question of understanding about these things. I mean, we're human, right? So that's why we do these things, why we compare ourselves, why we are our own worst critic, why we're hardest on ourselves. And quite often, I mean, me personally, as an organized person, I will create lists for myself, you know, things to do in the day. And if I haven't achieved those things, I before would very much have the tendency to feel like I haven't, you know, I failed for today because I haven't done all those things I put onto my list. But starting to learn that actually maybe the list I made in the first place wasn't realistic. I didn't have realistic expectations of what I was doing today, or realizing that, well, actually, you know, what kind of is my physical and mental capacity to do those things. And again, last year brought into question so many different things where, you know, you're seeing, as you say, if you start to look and compare yourself to other people who are doing all these kind of wonderful things that you see in social media, and the best thing you could do in the day was get out of your bed and make it to the couch. And you know, it's and that's fine. And I've really learned kind of after last year, I've really learned to be okay with the things that I was able to achieve in the day.
Having grace with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. We talk about, with my clients, we talk about the definition of done, because as entrepreneurs, like our brains just never shut off, right? Like we don't have jobs where we just go home at the end of the day. I physically am home all day. So I don't have an escape. But something that like I struggle with and my clients struggle with is because we are perfectionists and we have these big dreams that we want to accomplish, but it gets very overwhelming, especially as you're scaling to bigger, you know, like goals and monuments, then it gets really overwhelming. So what we try to do is like we create our definition of done, whatever that definition is, right? That could be 3 priorities of the day, that could be 1, but having this endless to-do list is always going to be there to like the day you die. So really,
it's always, I agree, it's always something else. There will always be something more. And you're completely right. As an entrepreneur and as a freelancer, you always feel every minute of every day, I could be doing emails, I could be doing more on my social media, I could be doing this, I could be doing that. There's never the off button. And kind of learning to switch off that off button sometimes, I think is very, very important. For me, for example, my weekend might be the busiest time of the week, so maybe on a Tuesday I don't really work. I just send a couple of emails and I have the day off, and I say to myself, well, actually, if I was in a normal person in a 9 to 5 having my Saturday, Sunday, I've just had my Saturday, and that's fine.
Yeah. And that's your, yes. So we have also in the mastermind, we have like a wellness, we have like a wellness expert that works with the women. And so she was giving this lecture on the definition of done, because everybody's just like burning out, and like the more money you make and the more you scale and the bigger your team becomes, like that all becomes overwhelming. So she was even saying like, what are little habits that you can implement into your day? And it could be something as simple as like you are committing to eating lunch during the day, right? It's just like those little things that add up to bigger things. And then and then also just having the grace with yourself to being like, I'm going to do this list today, and that is good enough. And that is perfect. And then I'm closing off my laptop. I'm walking away. Yes. Do I have other things I need to do? Yes. But today, that is my 100%. And I am okay with that.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with that. And I think it's an interesting way to put it. What is your definition of done, and making a definition of done?
Yeah.
I'm going to use that one.
Yes. Yes, live is great. So now moving on to your journey with breast cancer. How old were you when you got diagnosed?
So I was 33 when I was diagnosed. I'm now 35. So obviously very young. It was obviously a completely out of the blue. It was a shock. Didn't particularly have history in my family. It was kind of by chance finding it. So it was very much not something that I had planned in my career, so to speak.
I don't think anybody plans that, but
not that anybody plans that, but I think I kind of smugly thought to myself before my diagnosis that I, put my health first, and I used to listen to my body, and I used to take care of myself. Bullshit is all I can say. I think the day that I was diagnosed, I realized that I did not know what it was to actually listen to myself, listen to my body, and not, for example, think I must mentally push through this, and I must make myself do this, and I must make myself do that, and be like, hang on, I'm tired and I need to just sit down and watch TV for 2 hours. Or, it really,
like, take the damn nap. Like, take the damn nap. Take the damn nap when you need to take. That is literally, I have so many clients that, especially right now because it's the holiday season, and they're like, how do I work at 100% when I have X, Y, and Z going on in my life? And I'm like, take the damn nap. Like, I know you have deadlines, but take the damn night. Like, you come first above all.
Yeah, it's such good advice, and it's really something that kind of, firsthand really came to me last year. So for me, I would say at the start, things kind of ground to a halt, in the sense that at the very start of my particular journey, cancer was a full-time job. I mean, at least one, 2 appointments per day. There were scans, there was physiotherapy, there was recovering from surgery, there was then chemotherapy, there was all these different things. It was incredibly overwhelming, and I could not think of anything else but just getting through the next hour, the next day, and getting through those appointments and going through active treatment. And then kind of at some point during the treatment, for my chemotherapy, I had basically a cycle every 3 weeks. And the first week you feel like death, and the second week you feel not very great, and the third week suddenly you almost feel normal. And then for me, what I found a lot of last year going through the chemotherapy was the frustration of, I felt normal and I could work, and I wanted to work, and I wanted to be doing things, but I didn't at that time really have the systems in place for me to be doing work. So I could work at home, but I didn't, for example, I hadn't launched online classes yet. I didn't have, a network where I could have people coming around and doing in-person classes with me, plus going through chemotherapy. I mean, you're immunocompromised, so I wasn't really mixing with people. So my biggest kind of thing would have been only online classes. And so throughout the year, I basically realized that and these are things I had wanted to do. I'd wanted at the start of the year, these were my plans, but my plans kind of got pushed back and put on hold. But I really realized that for me to be sustainable, I need to be able, one, to work for myself and generate my own income. And by that, I mean, if I do an online class, or I do a class, that is me generating my own income myself. If I work for a client, then I'm effectively relying on having a client for business. So for me, I really wanted to start to build, let's say, a portfolio of, I have clients, but I also do generate my own work and my own income. And I have a nice, healthy balance of mix of that. And so last year, I think a lot of it was, there were times I was just completely unable. I was completely overwhelmed. And it was too much for me to be able to think about how to move forward, in a sense, with my business. But what I kind of realized as the weeks went on, as the months went on, is that even though I'm spent, an enormous amount of hours watching TV, let's pretend that I didn't,
Of course.
I still got things done, and I got things done to basically the best of my ability, energy that I had mentally and physically. So a big thing for me, for example, last year, I had actually set myself a goal on social media, on Instagram. And I'd set this before my diagnosis. At the start of the year, I challenged myself to create, basically to bake a French dessert every week, to take a photo of it and then share that on Instagram. And so once I had my diagnosis, I kind of said to myself, I'm going to do this. If this is the one thing I achieve this year, I am going to keep that up. And, for me, like it's therapeutic being in the kitchen. So the times where I felt well enough to be, I was in the kitchen happily baking along, doing things. And then really kind of having the time, because I did have time on my hands, to food style, to learn a lot about food styling, to learn more about photography, to take photos in my own home, and then to share that on my social media, on my Instagram. And also, I kind of shared about my story, my breast cancer journey. For me, actually, 2021 then ended up becoming, almost accidentally, it wasn't really like I was doing it on purpose, but I suddenly had this physical, visual portfolio of my work. And when I finally, at the end of the year, I actually, for months, I'd been like, I need to do a website. I need to make a website. I need to make a website. And I kept putting it off. It was quite a big thing for me to get to. And basically one morning in December last year, I say, right, I'm sitting down, getting on Squarespace, I'm making myself a website. And I suddenly realized I have a year's worth of photos. That's all I need to do. Just put this website, put all my photos up of my desserts. And I realized that this whole time throughout the whole year where I'd been feeling bad about, I haven't gone and done my website. I'd actually been working on it because I've been creating this visual portfolio.
Yeah.
And what happened for me, basically because of that, is that people found me through Instagram, and I have different clients thanks to that, thanks to actually the time and the energy that I put into that. I was contacted by an American travel agency, and next year we're now going to be doing these baking tours in Paris that I'll
be. Oh my goodness.
Which is absolutely incredible. And I was also contacted by an incredible woman in Australia who has a website. She creates recipes. She's just launched her cookbook. And she found me out of the blue on Instagram and asked me, would I recipe test for her, even though we live on other sides of the world. So I actually ended up having all of these opportunities through the time that I had put in Instagram, and that worked for me.
Yeah.
So,
and if I was just going to say, Jen's Instagram is like jaw-dropping gorgeous. Like if you don't follow her on Instagram, oh my God, please do. But please do yourself a favor and follow her, because her photography and her food styling and her creations, they taste as good as they look. A lot of times pretty things don't taste good. I can vouch for the 21 desserts I ate over my 7 days. That they are incredible. And it's so funny because before I went to the chateau, I had followed you for a while, because obviously I've known about the chateau for a while. And you were literally a celebrity to me. I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited to meet Jen. But it's
so funny.
But it's amazing because, a lot of the times, you said, I have to take this really big action to see result, like a website, right? When really you were like, well, to me right now, taking aligned action, to somebody else, it might look like a website, but to me and my journey and where I am in my time right now, I don't feel good, but I have this time and I want to motivate and I want to keep myself accountable to something. And that something was literally just one dessert at a time, 1 week at a time. And that little by little aligned action over time escalated to all of these amazing opportunities.
It really did, and I honestly, I mean, I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of myself to have
As you
realized that
should
last
be.
year. Well, I mean, it sounds so cheesy saying it, but last year I kind of thought, wow, like my career, it's ground to a halt. We've just come off the back of the pandemic, and then this happens, and you're like a young woman in your 30s, like you're missing out on all these opportunities. It really gave me time, a lot of many hours of time to
Yeah.
reflect what is it that I want, actually, what is it that I want as an entrepreneur, and what are my kind of priorities, what are my values, what are the most important things to me,
Yeah.
and to come out of that, really, one of the most important things to me, it is my health, it is my well-being, it is
Yes.
making the time, for example, making the time for me in the day to eat well and to exercise regularly. That is no longer a luxury to me, that is essential.
Yeah.
So
I remember one day at the chateau, I was like, Jen, why are you sweating? And you're like, I came back from a run. I'm not on vacation. And I was like, meanwhile, I'm like shoveling cake that you just made into my mouth for like the 5th time
You're
that
on
day.
vacation. Yes, exactly. And that's been a big thing for me, because I before, would be like, I prioritize work above everything. But
Yeah.
now I will say to myself, I'm going to stop working now. I'm going to take 2 hours to go and do yoga, 2 hours to
Yep.
go do a whatever, because for me, sport and keeping fit, it's no longer a luxury. It's become essential. It is part of my treatment. It reduces the risks of cancer returning. Of course, we should all look after ourselves, but it's so easy for that to be the thing that very quickly, looking after ourselves, eating well, or doing sport,
100%.
things that we put to the wayside, so we have more time to be answering emails or more time to be doing this or that. So it's very much, I learned an enormous amount of things, I think, last year as well. And kind of looking forward, I also feel like I now have kind of put in systems in place for myself, the foundations. If tomorrow my cancer came back, if I had to go back through chemotherapy again, if these things happen to me again, well, now when I feel well enough to, I can work from home. I
Yep.
can still give classes. I could still be doing things, and that was something that took time to build. And
Yeah.
I think it's something that's very important. Each person has to kind of follow their own journey and do what works for them. And I mean, everybody's situation is different. Me, for example, I don't have children, so I don't have a family. So last year, I mean, my mum actually came and lived with me for 2 months to look after me. My sister came and looked after me for a month, but I didn't have to, for example, go through the cancer journey and look after children. Thank
Oh,
God.
100%. Yeah.
Some people don't. That's just incredible. But it's still, it doesn't matter what your situation is, just it's so important still trying to find the time for you and your well-being, whatever form or shape that might take for you. So important.
Something that I find interesting is that like we leave corporate or our 9 to 5 jobs to build something that actually suits our life really better, right? So like, because I started my business so I could put me first, but
Yeah.
it's so easily to all of a sudden our business becomes the first priority again. And so now we're like back in this like corporate reversal of like, well, I started this business because I wanted to put me first, but then I got so overwhelmed that now like my business just like runs my life and I'm back in the same miserable state that I was before I started my business.
Yeah,
And so something that we work on with my clients is we look at long-term planning, because especially what I see online a lot working with businesses is it just about the next goal, like instant gratification, like monthly goal versus long-term profit or long-term planning. So like, yes, we are going to make sure you're hitting the next goal and that you have a roadmap for that, but also like there's a reason we have like a financial advisor inside of like the mastermind and a well-being advisor, because we are planning for the future. So we want to make sure that you're set up that when something does happen, regardless of what that is, whether that be like marriage, kids, divorce, like whatever it is, that you are like prepared in life to actually live the life you want and not feel like you're scrambling from the beginning again. And like you even said that breast cancer ultimately like changed your business model because all of a sudden you viewed your business so differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did and it didn't. It didn't in the sense that the things that I wanted to do, I already wanted to do them.
Yeah.
In a sense, I already wanted to, working more from home when I wanted to. I wanted to be doing these things. I just hadn't yet put those kind of systems in place. But it did change a lot because I really realized I need to make sure that my business model, my, you know, what I'm doing, my life, it is sustainable and it is adaptable to unforeseen, you know, things. And to kind of tune into what you're saying there, is that it is long term, that I'm not just thinking about the next class next week or the next
Yep.
workshop, but what about in 3 years time, 5 years time, kind of 10
Yep.
years time line, what is going to be sustainable. It's definitely, I think it's definitely made me more rounded as a person, for sure. I mean, anyone going through any sort of incredibly enormous life-changing experience, it changes a lot of things, but it also, there's a lot of things it doesn't change. You know, once kind of active treatments were over and your doctors push you out into the big world and they're like, get on with it, get over it. You know, that was a big moment for me, when you're suddenly like, holy shit, like but like, I'm considered fine now, but you're not fine.
Yeah,
You've been
no.
through so many things.
You've been
So you know,
traumatized.
yeah, you're trying to find like, what is kind of an acceptable level of working for me? You know, am I capable of working 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day? Like, is that just too tiring for me for the moment? You know, all these different things. And it is, I mean, again, to be cheesy, it is a journey. It's a journey, and, you know, it's kind of changing all the time, but it's taught me a lot of kind of things, and to also, yeah, know more about what do I want. And for me, I know more about what I'm kind of looking for. What do I want with my work? You know, for example, with my work, quite often I'm not at home, I'm working away from home. And that's something that I particularly enjoy, but I don't want to only ever be working.
Yes.
I want to have the home, you know, the balance, sometimes be at home and then, you know, have the opportunity to be working in different places, and choosing even who you want to work with. I mean, one of the
Oh,
biggest things,
100%.
yeah, one of the biggest things for me that I've actually learned, and it's very difficult as a freelancer or entrepreneur, really, to actually say no. I mean, to say no,
Oh.
in any kind of context, even to say no to a job offer or say no to a client, because actually at the start, I mean, of course, you just want to say yes to everything, because you think, oh, you know, you don't know when the next paycheck's coming from as a freelancer, or kind of, you know, you should just say yes to everything, but then realizing that some things actually maybe that's not aligned with kind of what you believe in, or that actually maybe it's not even like, doesn't even make good money sense, good business sense to take on that particular job. That's definitely something as well I've been able to kind of take a step back from and learn more about and understand more about, and choose what is good for me, choose the people and the clients who I want to work with, that's good for me, and that together we'll be able to really build and nurture a good relationship. Yeah, it's been a big learning process.
Yeah, and saying no is a big topic of conversation. The way, and even I've had to learn this because I definitely grew up as a people pleaser. Like like from like birth to like before I got laid off during COVID. Like it was people pleasing time. But
Yeah,
but owning my business has actually empowered me to step into the power of no. So the way I see it is like, I say no to protect my yeses, because my yeses have become so valuable and so protective, because they're actually what I want to be doing, and they're actually going to take me to where I want to go. That, like, I don't care how much somebody is willing to pay me. If it's a no, it's a no. And that's just like the way
yeah,
it is, because it's not aligned action, it's not intentional, and the money is not worth me sacrificing things right now just for an easy quick win. I much rather
sure.
stay in line and actually go to where I want to go a lot faster than waste my time with all of these yeses that I actually don't even really want to say yes to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's a huge part. And I mean, even just the older you get, I mean, aside from health problems, whatever, even just turning 30 and, you know, from my 30s onwards, learning so much about what maybe the kind of person I was in my 20s, the person I in my career, like you know, how I worked, why I worked a certain way in a job, or how I people, learning more kind of about myself, and then being able to, you know, apply more and kind of push more on my strengths, and then understand what my will be. I mean, again, as a freelancer, like your biggest thing is time management, right? Because I have to get up self-motivate myself to work, and I have to be strict with myself, and I do have to have some kind of structure and organized structure. Otherwise, when is the work ever going to get done? You know, so it's it's definitely a long learning process.
Yeah. So what would you say was the hardest part of this journey? Was it the fact that you had to force yourself to be like, I can only do as much as I can? Or was there any other part that was like the hardest, you would say?
I think the hardest, touching on what I said earlier, it was the frustration.
The frustration,
of when I felt okay and I had the time.
Yeah.
It was the frustration of, I don't have an office job where I could just say, I can come to work this week and sit behind my computer. I could physically bake and do whatever, but I couldn't do that to earn money, so to speak. That was the frustration. But, you know, as I say, I mean, doing this kind of project of making a cake every week and taking photos of it and putting that on Instagram does not have a monetary value. It did not make money, but in retrospect, it has, because it's brought me clients, and even people taking my online classes. It's people who've come through Instagram, so people who've seen my profile and they've seen my work. So you can't put a monetary value on that, but I think it was hard for me. It was hard to feel like I'm missing a year of my career. So yeah, I think that was hard.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I felt the same. So like because I also got let go. So when COVID was happening, I got let go from my marketing job, because marketing is always the first to go when there's any kind of like budgetary restrictions. And at the time, I also was very frustrated, because I was like, oh, I've literally worked the last 10 years to get out of my small town in Florida, like pay my way through college, get to New York. Like I've worked so hard just to like barely survive here, right? And like within also 1 second, that all got taken away from me, because the moment I got laid off, our stipend was not that big, right? So I couldn't live off of it for the next year, basically. So I couldn't afford my apartment. I couldn't afford to live. I couldn't afford groceries. Like I also had to go on government assistance. And I was like, oh my God, now I need to move back home. The last 10 years of my life was for nothing, because now I'm back to square one. And I just had this like hatred. I just had this like resentment within myself. But to your point, when you were like, I had all this time and space to actually think about what I wanted, who I was, my morals, my values. So I think I moved back home at 29, and I was like, ugh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I was like, oh my God, I never in a million years foresaw this situation. Me and Coco moving back home. But I think over the course of like 6 months, from like February, like over the course of 6 months, I just kind of took time and didn't really do anything. Like I just was myself, and I just kind of like did what I wanted to do, and I thought about things, and it really gave me the space and the clarity to be like, no, I don't want to go back to that life. Like that, I now have hindsight, and I understand why everything, like I believe everything happens for a reason. So I understood what like the lessons I needed to learn. I understood why I had certain skills. I understand why certain things didn't like work out. And now I'm in a position where I feel like I can go, I know what I want to do. I know what my passion really is now. And I know if I stick to that, then eventually I'll be able to come back to New York and live an even better life than I had hoped. And within 10 months of little actions, within 10 months, I was able to move back to my dream apartment that I never in a million years thought I would be able to afford. Right. So in the moment, so it's like, space and time is such an interesting thing because we don't actually have it. We just go, go, go every day. And then when you have something like a global pandemic hit and you are forced to think about it, you're like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't really like the way things are going, and
Yeah.
I can change them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, even the way the pandemic, it changed so many things. For example, before the pandemic, I wouldn't even have thought about giving pastry classes online. But
Yeah.
thanks to pandemic, I mean, certainly for things like cuisine, for pastry, suddenly people were happy in their own homes to buy their ingredients and watch a computer screen and learn how to make something. And that still stands today. And, that's
Yeah.
kind of that actually, for me, it's opened up kind of all these different opportunities and all these different things. And I think that it doesn't matter, what life throws your way. You just have to, whatever it is, take the opportunities where they are. And I mean, whether that's something to do with your health, global pandemic, getting laid off,
Yeah.
there's always, I mean, I think you're like me. I'm a positive person. I think there's always a silver lining. Things
Hmm.
reason. I agree, and yeah.
What is something that you value now that you used to not value?
The obvious answer, I would say my well-being. I
Yeah.
thought I valued it before, but I didn't understand
Mm.
how to value my health and my well-being. It's something, it can be very confronting at our age, like
Oh,
when
100%.
you're in your 20s and your 30s, you just don't think that your health will fail you. Like it's a
Mm.
shock, a big surprise. And so understanding and kind of incorporating that into my life, and it is, like, yes, I'm in remission and I look better and I'm doing pretty well, but there's it is a change for life. Like there has been trauma, there's been psychological changes, there's still
Yeah.
physical changes, still there's still secondary effects to treatments. There's all these different things that do impact my life, like in a little and in a large way. But I think that I just try my best to kind of work with them and really think about what can I do in my day, that is going to be good for me and my health and whether that's physical, also mental well-being as well. It's
Yeah. Putting yourself first before the business. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
And what is something that you used to value, but you no longer value?
Used to value and no longer value. Well, I think maybe touching back on what we talked about before, it's perfectionism. I used to,
Mm.
as I say, like really just want things to be so perfect before I would like put it out there or whatever, and then just realizing that it's not always possible as such, and that sometimes your best is enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, because it doesn't matter what you do, there's always one thing more you could have changed, or whatever. And so I think that that's maybe something I've kind of would say that I don't hold as such a value anymore. Obviously
Yeah.
do the best that you can, but maybe redefine what your perfect is.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think because you've accomplished so much, you've done so much, even like the cancer side, you have such like you have such amazing accolades. Do you feel like at this point going through everything that like you truly can do anything that you want to do? Like anything you set your mind towards that you can do?
I'd like to say I think that I could. Certainly, I mean, there's certainly things that I would like to do in my life, and there's goals that I have, and that's the age I am now at 35. That might be different at 40, at 45, at 50.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that, I've shown to myself what like hard work and dedication and
Mm.
passion also can bring about. And I think that I just need to stay true to myself and continue doing what I'm doing, and yeah, sky's the limit.
Oh, 100%. And what is your long-term vision? Not only in business, but like in life? Like where do you want to be in like the next 10 years?
I think, globally, I would like to be happy and healthy. I think that I would like, if that is going to be possible, to possibly have a family in the next 10 years. It's definitely something that would be important to me in whatever form that is, whether it's able to have children myself, or adoption, or meeting someone already with children, on the more kind of personal side of things. And then I think more on the career side of things, I'd really like to continue to grow what I've been doing now, and kind of doing more in-person workshops, and continue to teach and just work on all of those things that I've been working on, all of like the courses and the classes that I've put together. And I guess one of my kind of lifelong dreams is one day do my own cookbook, have my own recipe book with pictures and nice photography and things. I think that's one of kind of my big long-term goals.
Oh my goodness. Well, I would 100% buy it. And you, but you are working with the Chateau on their cookbook, correct?
Yes. The Chateau, hoping for next year they'll be putting out a cookbook. But yes, we've been working on a big project on that.
I'm so excited to see it. I obviously will be buying
it. Obviously.
And I will be back. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say? Where can people find you?
First of all, is there anything else I would like to say? I would like to say to every single person listening out there, make sure that you check your chest every month. Check regularly, please. Does not matter whether you are male, female, whatever gender. Super, super important. Look after yourselves. And then where can we find me? You can find my good self on Instagram with the handle Jennifer Pogmore. And also you can find me on the internet on my website, which is of the same name, jenniferpogmore.com.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny. You have literally been like one of my favorite people I've met this year, and I had such a blast with you. I had such a blast with you in France.
We had a good time.
Literally, the fact that you were able to churn out 3 different desserts a day for 7 days, I was like, I'm not even gonna lie. I like went home and I was like, oh. But
yeah, we like to feed.
Yes, it was amazing. And you're such an inspiring person. And I'm just so lucky to get to know you and have crossed paths with you. And 100% will we be seeing each other again, whether that's in France or New York City, because you have to come, obviously.
I know. I'm booking my flights.
Yes. All right. Well, I will be linking Jennifer's Instagram here in the show notes, but thank you so much. And I will see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Respectez en French. À bientôt.